I used Xianyun 225 times in Spiral Abyss, and this is what I learned. Why is... What? Oh. Wait. Why did I pick G? I'm a
Skyward!
idiot. A quick overview, she's an Animo Catalyst, so normal attacks are Animo damage. You can use your skill up to 3 times to play Flappy Bird, and regardless of how many you do, the subsequent plunge will generate 5 Animo particles when one becomes a tactical nuke. Tapping E again after the duration of each animation helps in maximizing the distance covered for open world exploration, and not plunging at the end reduces your skill cooldown by 3 seconds. If your goal is height, I don't believe tapping slow or fast affects your maximum altitude, but tapping faster means you get there faster. Her burst is a bit of Animo damage and upfront heal with a heal over time for all party members, as well as a buff that allows the active unit to jump extra high and deal additional plunge damage based on Xianyun's attack up to 8 times. This additional damage will only apply to one enemy, and based on my testing, it kinda looks like it just somebody at random. I think most people have already figured out that Claymore, Sword, and Catalyst units can use dash cancels, bow units
Lament!
and polearm units can use normal attack cancels. After that, you got a couple of weird ones like Mona and Ayaka that can technically dash cancel, but it ends up being slower because you need to wait out the entirety of the dash animation, so it's better to normal attack cancel for them instead. Another outlier is Bennett, who's also kind of weird, but on the opposite side where he actually cancels faster than the average sword user. Speaking of Bennett, activating his C6 allows most Claymore, Sword, and polearm units to be vaporized or melt carries if they weren't already, even if they've been traditionally deemed underwhelming. So, time to disrespect our surroundings. The team I was most eager to try was Hu Tao with Furina, Yelan, and Xianyun. The combo I preferred was 5 N2C JP plus N2C, which is 2 normal attacks, a charged attack, a jump, and a plunge 5 times, plus 2 more normal attacks and a charged attack. The timing is tighter than my grip on a lonely day, but it's super satisfying to pull off. Like my grip on a lonely day. Alternatively, you can do 5 N1C JP plus 2 N1C instead, as the difference isn't too noteworthy. C0 Hu Tao enjoyers may rejoice as Xianyun's jumping buff incentivizes you to jump cancel Hu Tao's charged attacks, which means our favorite Red Rocket's Constellation 1 value drops. That being said, going from C0 Hu Tao with Xingqiu Yelan and Zhongli to C0 Hu Tao with Furina Yelan and Xianyun is a noticeable upgrade. Even if you have C1 Hu Tao, you'll find that Storks are still rising. Storks because it looks like stonks, even though she's a crane. Something important to note is the Xingqiu Yelan team will consistently guarantee you vaporize on all of your charged attacks. In my experience, using only Furina and Yelan as my Hydro applicators would occasionally cost me up to 1 or 2 vaporizes per rotation due to Furina's critters doing as they please, and the amount of pyro application coming from Hu Tao's N's, C's, and P's. I've had times where I could vaporize and vibe on every charged and plunged attack, then other moments where I'd miss and I'd mauled. Another thing worth mentioning is plunge attacks have a fairly respectable radius, so positioning properly to hit multiple enemies is kinda pog, but proper positioning also takes time, which will likely cost you the last N2C in your combo. And if you clear a wave in Spiral Abyss and the next one spawns farther off, you're almost definitely losing a plunge attack. Losing one plunge attack feels pretty terrible when you know you've only got a total of 5 in the chamber. And while we're on the topic of AoE damage, Furina's Hydro application becomes even less reliable since her critters may be targeting different enemies, meaning there's a possibility you lose more vaporizes. Fortunately, Xianyun sort of fixes that. Sometimes. Maybe. Xianyun's burst also comes with a coordinated Animo attack. If there's somehow a Hydro aura left on anything you plunged on, Xianyun can swirl it onto nearby enemies, then you can happily go back to committing war crimes. Despite all the scary ways you could lose damage, it's not without some benefits. If you dash cancel your Hu Tao combos, there's a pretty good chance you've experienced stamina problems. No need to be embarrassed, most men suffer from this eventually. In the Xingqiu Yelan team, bringing an Animo unit for the Viridescent Venerer Hydro resistant shred yielded more damage, but I often found myself slotting in Zhongli for his thick shield instead. This allowed me to more or less ignore enemy attacks while I let my stamina recharge so I could blow it all on Hu Tao again. After tagging Furina and Xianyun in, jump cancels are baked into your combos so you're naturally preserving a lot of stamina, which gives you the liberty of dodging at any given point in your rotation. The next character I really wanted to mess around with was Raiden Shogun, and I give her synergy with Xianyun a Bay Don't out of 10, meaning Xianyun's attack buff does not work with Raiden's burst. Hoyo is really driving home the point that Raiden can't cook. But it's still okay, because Raiden gets some air and her burst plunge multipliers are pretty strong. Do note that slotting Xianyun in comes with an opportunity cost, likely to be Kazuha, whose elemental damage buff is pretty significant. As a trade-off, you can give Xianyun Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers to mitigate the loss. Since Xianyun's energy recharge requirements are so high, this is usually not a viable option, but Raiden generates enough energy to offset the difference. That being said, it can make the rotations feel kind of weird, especially if you're trying to run Tenacity of the Millilith on Sara, so I've been more comfortable going without it. Raiden's initial slash damage won't look as good when you look at the Furina and Xianyun teams, but Furina's presence increases team DPS substantially, so you're basically trading a big funny number for the opportunity to watch Raiden bounce. As an additional little bonus, Raiden actually has some extra wiggle room in her plunges. Most infusions will expire mid-plunge, resulting in a physical damage hit upon landing. For some odd reason, if Raiden's burst expires before she hits the ground but after she starts to plunge, she still maintains her electro damage. One of the bigger winners with Xianyun's release is Xiao, whose angst is inversely proportional to his height. Throughout the years, he's had his ups and downs, but now he downs harder. And that's kind of it. To be honest, it doesn't really feel that much different to play him, but his numbers are bigger, and bigger number is bigger better. Also, I'm not chained to Bennett's circle anymore. If I want to murder that guy over there, I can do so with zero remorse and an honest-to-God smile on my face. Most other units I've tried range between borderline cope to pretty dope. Diluc is a character I've been enjoying with varying levels of success. I found that running him with Furina and Yelan or Xiao was the best way to consistently get his plunges to vaporize, but someone will need to be holding a Favonius weapon or he'll need some extra ER since his infusion is tied to his burst and Bennett isn't there to give him balls. Getting a Pyro Swirl is also pretty impractical, so you'll be riding your pogo stick knowing you could pogo harder. Alternatively, you can run C6 Bennett for his infusion and additional pyro application for your VV Shred, but that comes at the cost of Yelan or Xiao's slot, on top of being limited to the confines of Bennett's circle. You could replace Furina with either of them, but at that point you're basically running the OG Diluc squad with a Sassy Bird instead. Despite bringing Bennett along, I still found getting a Pyro Swirl reliably to be difficult. If you open with Furina's skill into burst, then Bennett's burst into skill, into Xianyun's normal attack, skill then burst, you'll have your swirl, but the timing is tight and probably not viable if you have higher ping. An alternative is starting the same way, but instead of tapping Bennett's E, you hold until you see his charge level 1 activate. He'll attack twice and reapply Pyro, giving you a little time to swirl before Furina's critters crave the taste of blood again. If neither of those options works for you, but you have his C6, you can simply wait for the Pyro to fall off after tapping his skill, reapply Pyro with a normal attack, and swap to Xianyun for the swirl. Alternatively, you can open with Furina's burst into skill, then Xianyun's burst, then Bennett's burst, skill, pause, normal attack, Xianyun normal attack or skill, and you get a similar result. In any event, the rotation is pretty sensitive, and if you find yourself disrupted, like you got knocked back or you have to dodge, you may find it difficult to find an opportunity to swirl again, since Furina's critters only know violence and her Hydro application is difficult to control. For this reason, you may find more comfort in running the Songs of Days past artifact set instead of Veritas and Venera for the sake of simplicity at the cost of damage. Something else to note, using Diluc's skill isn't really worth the time it takes to cast, so it sort of feels like you're wasting a fat portion of his kit. On top of that, with C6 Bennett, Diluc's burst is also kind of in the same boat, so you're really just bringing Diluc to watch Mondstadt Batman use someone's face as a trampoline. With Furina as the only Hydro applicator, things can get pretty inconsistent. Sometimes you can vaporize everything just by mashing buttons, sometimes you can vaporize everything by delaying your plunges and waiting for the Hydro aura, but that feels awful. Sometimes you vaporize some things by not caring and just going to town, and sometimes Furina vaporizes instead and makes you wonder why you even tried. The same inconsistent vaporize problems exist with Gaming, but since Gaming's entire kit revolves around plunge attacks, the experience feels more cohesive and satisfying. Until it doesn't. As for sword users, Bennett kind of slaps. There's not much else to say, you can pretty much alternate between E and plunges. Ayaka, on the other hand, felt pretty clunky to me due to her alternate sprint, but you could probably chalk that up to skill issue, and I'd agree with you. Most other sword units that can receive Bennett C6 infusion, I felt pretty similar results to the Claymores and Polearms, with the exception of Keqing and Furina. Keqing being a unit that can take advantage of Aggravate really well, I felt better spamming her charge attacks instead. While plunging will also aggravate on every hit, it just felt slower than her standard combos. Furina, on the other hand, has unremarkable plunge attacks. Until C6. Then it's kinda like snorting cocaine out of a stripper's butt crack. Straying away from polearms, claymores, and swords, we have catalysts. They're infused with their respective elements by default, and since plunges have no ICD on elemental application, every plunge can trigger a reaction. That means running a cryo, pyro, or hydro unit will trigger your melts or your vapes similar to how you'd run Plunge Diluc. Geocatalyst is... well, mine's not built. And Anemo Catalyst is fun because it feels fast, but whether it be with One Punch Man or Sweetie Fox, it doesn't really compete with Xiao's output. Electro Catalysts get pretty interesting. The Aggravate reaction is simple enough, more reactions is more better. Traditionally, you would trigger Aggravates with a combination of normal attacks and charge attacks to get as many Aggravate procs as possible. The problem with this is charge attacks for Catalysts cost 50 stamina. Yai and Lisa are not known for their bulk, so not having the stamina to dodge could be the difference between getting your coveted 3 stars or being splattered into a fine mist. With Xianyun's buff, you can use plunge attacks in lieu of charge attacks. While you ideally cancel the end of the plunge animation with a dash, it's not nearly as stamina heavy as using charge attacks. And despite not being able to dodge in the air, floating up there for a second or two tends to be fairly safe, since a lot of enemies don't have attacks that reach that high. In this regard, you get pseudo iframes by trying to do damage. However, if enemies can hit that high, then in a funny turn of events, you're gonna get aggravated instead. On that note, the only thing more aggravating than literally aggravating is when you want to trigger a Dendro Core for a Hyperbloom reaction, only to have miHoYo tell you no as they guide you into the enemy instead. If you're playing Yai, it's not too bad. You can reposition yourself so that the enemy, the Dendro Core, and you form a straight line, then you swing away. A unit like Lisa, on the other hand, needs to cleave things with her charge attack and hope the core in question is close enough to also take the hit. With the ability to plunge, you can just pogo stick your way over to the cores you want to violate, bypassing the need for more precise positioning. As for Dendro Catalysts, it depends on the unit. I don't have Baiju, but he can be valuable as an on-field driver. His normal attacks feel pretty slow, so I can see there being a benefit to enabling a plunge playstyle on him. Nahida, on the other hand, does work fine, but her normal attacks don't take up too much time, and her charge attack can be cancelled very early into the animation, so I feel she doesn't enjoy as much of a benefit. Lastly, we have bow units. Unfortunately, the only thing you'll likely be plunging is the toilet. I gave it a try, and I can confidently say it's definitely something. If there was a unit I didn't cover, I either don't have them, their nuances would overlap with someone like Diluc, so it'd just be redundant information, or it just wouldn't make much sense. The good news is, with the exception of bow units, Xianyun has the potential to enable almost anyone to be an on-field unit. Even better than that, it's not entirely coping. A plunge DPS Dia might not be as strong of an option as Hu Tao, but it will be enough for Spiral Abyss, given you've pumped enough resin into her. On the downside, it'll mean you'll have to level your normal attacks, but if you like that unit enough, you might have done it already anyways. Now unfortunately, what comes up must come down. Obviously, if you don't like plunge attacks, Xianyun is probably not for you. If you pull her, use her for a week, then decide the playstyle isn't your thing, it's probably not a good investment. Even if you do like churning butter violently, it's not without its jank. Some units can be interrupted on their way up, and when you're mid-jump and yeeted across a map, you're definitely not plunging on somebody's skull. Some enemies have hitboxes that interact strangely in that they can sometimes block you from jumping high enough to do your plunge, or maybe you've jumped into them and you just sort of slide off, which can also prevent you from plunging. There's also the plunge hitbox itself, where if an enemy is high enough in the air, it can avoid the hard-hitting part of your plunge attack entirely. If these are issues you're willing to look past, great, but it's also important to consider a unit like Xianyun, while flexible, is also somewhat inflexible. If you want to enable your uninfused polearm sword or claymore units to vaporize, you need C6 Bennett for the infusion. And while not technically necessary, and also not without her own issues, Furina helps a lot. Despite her critters having somewhat inconsistent Hydro application, their antics are not tied to normal attacks like Yelan and Xiao are. Additionally, for psychological satisfaction, the nature of Furina's buffs makes Xianyun's healing feel more impactful, so much so that I've almost glued the two of them together. If you're okay with that, swell, but you might not always be. Some units like Nouvelette also benefit greatly from Furina's presence. If you want to run Nouvelette on one side of the Abyss, and a Plunge party on the other, you're going to end up in court for a custody battle instead. Your alternative is Plunge Nouvelette, which is actually kind of funny. Speaking of funny things, if you found something goofy that I didn't cover, I'd love to hear about your experiences. If you find errors in my logic or disagree with something I said, I'd also like to know. I'm not the sharpest bulb in the crayon box, so I wouldn't be surprised if I missed something important. On that note, if I find out anything new that I think would have been important to include in the video, I'll throw it in a pinned comment. So, thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. One last thing. Did you know that 100% of you are not subscribed? Good, keep it that way, this channel's gonna be a shit show. I can only use this joke once.
Of course, whenever the perils you face overwhelm you, or you become weary, one is always here for you. After all, as an elder, it is only right to look out for the young ones.
I pulled for a mommy, but I got a mother.